Hi, I think we can get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, and thank you for joining us. My name is Aida Nielsen, and I'm a research coordinator at the Dell Center and a project director for the cfrae study at the UT Health School of Public Health in Austin. Today's webinar is hosted by the Michael and Susan Dell Center for Healthy Living at the UT Health School of Public Health in Austin. The center's vision is healthy children in a healthy world. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping announcements. This webinar is being recorded and will be archived along with the slides on our website at msdcenter.org. Following Joy's presentation, we will open the virtual floor to you, the audience members. Please enter any questions you have for Joy in the chat box. I know there will be a ton of questions because she's quite impressive. And so without any further ado, I'm excited to introduce our speaker today, Joy Chevalier. As a veteran of corporate America turned chef and entrepreneur, Joy combines her technology background with culinary arts as the CEO of the Cooks Nook, a culinary incubator, and one we will hear more about shortly. Yeah. Joy also established the I have more, Joy. I'm going to talk just a little bit more about you. Right. Joy also established the Chevalier Fellows, focusing on bringing Black and Brown consumer packaged goods businesses into the food industry through her role as a board member of Naturally Austin. She's also founder and culinary lead for Greater Austin Black Chamber of Commerce's Taste of Black Austin. Joy works with the City of Austin's Office of Sustainability, Central Texas Regional Food Systems Organizing Committee, is a member of Les Dames L'Escoffier, Google's National Refresh Working Group, and the City of Austin's Travis County Food Policy Board. For those of you who always vote, you may have noticed her name on the ballot. In 2018, Joy was the first African-American woman to run for comptroller of the state of Texas. She serves on the board of the directors of Annie's List. She has received 2018 City of Austin Small Business Award for Excellence in Community Business Leadership and won the 2018 Citizen of the Year by the Greater Austin Area Black Chamber of Commerce. And so believe it or not, that was just a super condensed bio. So I'll hand it over to Joy, who will share a little bit more about her work. So thank you all for joining us.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. And thank you, all of you, UT Health and the foundation, Michael Susan Dell Foundation, for having me. And just appreciate you guys so much. And hi, everybody. I'm Joy Chevalier. Most of what Aida said was true. I'm really delighted to be here today to talk to you about some of the things that are happening in this intersection of food and technology. We'll talk about my company as example, but we get to talk about a whole bunch of different things and where nutrition sort of sits in that conversation and what else can be done. You know, we really need to hear from those on our health side a lot, but you'll be surprised at some of the things that's going on presently. And there's certainly a space for those who are focused on nutrition, health outcomes, and these social determinants of health. So I would say, feel free to jump in. I am thoroughly happy if you guys let folks do that. We can also wait to the end. Also always like questions because questions lead to further conversation. So either way we go, off we go. So as mentioned, I spent 18, 19 years as a technologist after working on my PhD studies in British literature and technology. I am a Miltonist by training. I'm Miltonist and Shakespearean by training with a degree in Latin, don't ask. I say all of that because, you know, when I decided to leave my corporate job and do something that I thought would be even more impactful, you know, from the early days of the internet, we created products. But, you know, what does it mean now to have impact as the tooth of technology gets longer and longer and longer? And so I decided to focus on this area that's called food and tech. And food and tech is this sort of intersection where we bring together a couple of sectors. It is the processes around innovation, product ideation, launch, and how to get into the market quickly and develop a product that is customer-centered and customer-focused. How do we do that? And we do it in tech all the time. It's just the way we work. You know, as a global product strategist, that was my job. I was in and out of what products, you know, need to exist, and how does this product need to work to make it functional, useful, beneficial for customers, for people. And so, after about getting towards 20 years, I used to have a saying whenever things get really tense in technology, and we're in a room, and often I'm the only black face in a room, and many times often the only woman, or maybe one of two in a room. And I would say, people get very excited, and I would say, look, we are not curing cancer, we are not putting shoes on children, and we are not feeding the hungry. And that was my standard line. Well, it got to be one day where everybody was agitated about stuff online and products, and I made the same statement, and it came out. We are not curing cancer, we are not putting shoes on children, and we are not feeding. And I literally had a beat where I stopped. And that was to say, well, why am I not doing those things? And how do I do those things? And within 3 years of that, I was out. I planned my exit and went to culinary school while I was actually still working as a global product strategist and running, a $10 billion sort of programming and, multi-billion-dollar websites, to go to culinary school and say, what's needed here? And how do I bring innovation into this? Luckily, there was emerging thing that I think we really defined over the last 5-6 years, which is food and tech, bringing those tech processes into food, into the culinary space. Not just the work of what your brand companies do around R&D, but how do you do this at an entrepreneurial level? Anyway, the point of all that was we created the Cooks Nook. I did, and we actually have a facility on the southeast side of town, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that and lead into some of these other areas. Hope the food looks really good in this. So intros, and then about us, the purpose, products, what that impact looks like, and what does that sort of mean for you guys. We'll talk about that. So the Cooks Nook began as a culinary incubator. We focused on entrepreneurs learning how to do the things that I described. How do they they have the need, because most are bootstrapped. They're not coming with millions of dollars, and they're coming with food out of their communities, out of their experience, out of their health experience. I can't tell you, but probably 60% of entrepreneurs who start food companies do so because of something about their own health. There was something not being addressed. There was a product that doesn't exist. There are all kinds of gaps in food that people need. One of my favorite products that has come through the Cooks Nook, a young woman who was allergic to pretty much a whole bunch of the items of chemicals that were in what we call shelf-stable salad dressings. And so she was trying to develop a fresh salad dressings that did not have stabilizers in them, but could be on a shelf that was delicious. She was trying to make food for herself, and that's generally how it goes. And so she became a member of the Cooks Nook. We hadn't even finished our building yet, and worked with her on her spreadsheets, etc. This product, what does it need to look like? What does it need to be? And so we finally got to a point where we had a taste test. And I invited 3 chefs along with myself to taste these products. She made them right there. She made fresh dressings. And we got down through the 4th dressing. They were good. But that is a really crowded market, the salad dressing. It's a hugely crowded market. How are you going to be different? And then she said, well, I've got one more thing, but it's not a dressing. Do you want to see it? We were all standing there. Sure. Why don't she put it out? And she brought out this yogurt, and she had some beautiful jam, and she put on top. And we took the bowl and we did this and we ate. And then you have that moment where you all look at each other. And we were like, why didn't we start with this? It was probably the best yogurt. And I've had yogurt from here to Central Europe and back. And it was probably the best yogurt I had ever tasted. And all of us looked at each other and said, this is what you need to go to market with. And she eventually did. And the yogurt was first called coconut, and it was one of the first plant-based yogurts. It was stable to be in a refrigerated section of a store. And coconut, now that it's gotten bigger, it now is probably, if you see it on the shelves, as Culina yogurt, Culina, Culina yogurt. And that's Erin's company. And she's done a fantastic job. But again, that story sort of highlights what generally happens with entrepreneurs. They're making something to solve for themselves, right? Or a loved one so they can eat. Right? So we began as an incubator, and then something happened. Something happened that is called COVID. And as a product person, and I was actually sick with COVID early in February of 2020, February, March. And thinking about being customer centered as a conviction as part of my product management sort of background. It's always about solving somebody's problem first, then you extrapolate to see how that might work for others. But in my haze, I said, one of the things that's going to happen is you're going to get a whole bunch of people who will suddenly become more food insecure in COVID. They wouldn't be able to access it. Food, of course, is tied up with transportation and mobility. They may not have facilities to get a box or receive a box from the food bank or a pantry. They're going to have a prepared meal, right? And it's got to be a prepared meal that is accessible, lasts a while, because we don't know the circumstance of the person. They may not have refrigeration. They may not even have a home, right? And not everybody, as you say here on the slide, has the same access to food, period, let alone nutritious food. And so we developed what we're going to talk about, which is Mosaic Meals to Go, and how to do that innovatively with high quality. We don't want to create food that undermines a person's health, provides them access to nutrition dense product because it may be the only thing they get to eat that day, and be able to do it in an affordable way. And so that's what the Cooks Nook has become. It has been an amazing road to sort of talk about this. But what we ended up discovering is that we're talking about food from a couple different angles. From the entrepreneur side, the food that's come out of a community and come out of a need. How do they get to market? We also did work with some companies, brand companies, but we'll put that off to the side at the moment. And then now, how do we ourselves in the food services group address a need, which is you don't have food services companies in Central Texas. We literally don't. We would be the first homegrown food services company in Central Texas. Amazing, huh? So that's what we're focused on these days, both sides of the house, and then of course advocacy, working on the committees that we talked about in order to move food policy forward in a healthy way. So products, I mentioned them already. One is Mosaic Meals, and these are our full. You guys are probably familiar with the REs. They're small black containers with the opaque lids. And so Mosaic Meals, I'll show you here some photos in a minute. Our fully cooked entrees, all our leaders happened to graduate from my culinary school. That was not intentional, happened that way coincidentally. But chef-led, culturally competent selections made with stuff that people can identify. They can see what their food is. We don't do casseroles, fried foods. We have a whole sort of nutritional manifesto of production things that we don't do. We make our own dressings, things of that nature that we do in-house, so we can control the sugar content, nutritional content, the any of the contents, so that we can focus in on trying to come up with a high quality product that is affordable and accessible, but still exceeds nutritional needs, right? And gives people options. If someone doesn't like something in the dish, when you have a casserole, you can't separate it. The way we do things, you know, if there's a little something that doesn't quite appeal, you know, they can hold that. Mosaic meals is a set of breakfast, lunch, and dinner. When, you know, we have over 100, almost 150 meals these days. That sort of rotate in and out. Yeah, we have just moved into even focused, you know, it was a natural migration from creating a meal to creating healthy meals, to creating different kinds of healthy meals, to creating something that is now medically tailored. And we've just moved into creating plant-based items in our menu, but more specifically to the medical tailoring, our renal meals. And that, of course, as you guys will know, is a challenge, but we're there, and we're really confident about what we have, and our own dietitian having looked at that. Nutritious, affordable, convenient. We deliver around Austin and Central Texas to our buyers. Our buyers are organizations. We are B2B, and then they distribute within their communities as they see fit. They know their communities better and the goals that their community is trying to achieve, how it may fit with other SDOH. And so we're not, you know, Grubhub or anything. It is a meal services company manufacturer who's providing to buyers. And some of them are foundations who may be doing specific wellness work, as well as some insurers. Certainly our city, county work with our school districts. And so our drivers deliver to those organizations, actually also in a little bit of retail too. And we're also moving now into being able to ship a select set of our meals that ship well frozen. And so, yeah, so we're starting to get there. And Mosaic Meals to Go is our sort of quick food, quick service. Your grab and goes, healthy grab and goes, not just vegetables in a cup. We're going to look at some of them here in a moment. Breakfast, lunch, and some portions are large enough. Some of them are large enough for dinner. Again, nutritious, affordable, and convenient. And it is packaged primarily for retail, residential communities, our senior or aged facilities where people might want something small and quick, or even for younger folks, collegiate folks as well. So yeah. So it allows people to have different kinds of food choices. And this is all about people being able to be a choice. So the impact of what we've done so far over in the last year and a half, we've done, 2 years, we've done, because it's been just about 2 years, over 1 million meals. We also track our food that's been shared and distributed, how we're avoiding waste. That's also a key part of what we do. And working with in the last 2 years, over 90 organizations, stores, and companies, and foundations for that matter, across Central Texas, and starting to reach a little bit beyond that. Sites around Travis County where you can see Mosaic Meals or Mosaic Meals to Go. Zip codes. We know that the zip codes in Travis County are very sensitive. 13 zip codes in Travis County do not have any sort of food access. As a matter of fact, 78742, where the Cooks Nook sits, has no food, zero. And it's interesting, after Storm Uri, we became a distribution site for some of the few neighbors that are in 78742, which is only about 3 miles from downtown Austin as the crow flies, has only 250 households, is bounded by the river, a big turn in the river as it goes east out of town. And it has never really been developed. And so once we sort of realized that, we had to do our own distributions for Storm Uri, pepper the neighborhood, and invite them to come and eat and get food from us. And then we also host a conference on our food resilience, access, and equity. We just had it again during South by, during Future of Food. It was huge, and all of those videos from all the talks, food talks, hours, and others. It was almost a week of nothing but food programming, food activity at the South by Center itself. Future Food was a huge success, looking to repeat it next year. And all those videos can be found online, including ours at Food Tank. Food Tank's website, also Future of Food on YouTube. So you can find all the videos there. So the zip codes that I've mentioned, These are zip codes being serviced, and off the in combination understanding what UT Dell's Medical's zip code list look like. We actually are starting to go further than that, and certainly our ship method will also be able to accommodate. We hope to be able to reach all the zip codes within Travis County towards the end of this year, either through our direct delivery drop off to the organizations or through a mail program that the organizations may have. So who's impacted? We talk about health and nutrition, and who are we keeping in mind? Food insecure individuals, quarantined individuals, first responders. Can't tell you how many times, particularly after Storm Uri, the meals we made, actually, many of them ended up with some EMT staff, county staff, EOC staff, who actually came and picked up cases of meals from us. Certainly people with disabilities who are immunocompromised. We hear much from those who are immunocompromised or in households with people who are immunocompromised. Therefore, they're also limited and restricted as well. Those who are in caregiving, youths, students. Just met a student the other day at Houston Tillotson. As you guys probably know, 40% of all students, some numbers say up to about 55 to 60% of all students at university level are actually food insecure. I remember being one of them. There were times where I did not know what I was going to eat. I had nothing but $25 left after I paid my bills, being a graduate student TA, every 2 weeks. And, you were constantly food insecure, which means you were making poor and bad choices. I ate a ton of terrible ramen, right? A ton, for instance. Of course, our seniors, those are who are in recovery, I think, who are missing a lot, that they often will fall through the cracks in this. People recently arrived in the community who, in fact, actually are responsible for a lot of our new food products that are, and new food, vegetable food that is going on in Travis County. Postpartum students, well, a little bit repeat here, but I'll clean that up, but you get the idea. So again, on impact, this is actually stuff from organizations who've worked with us. You may know some of them. The Center for Survivors of Torture. Many are recent arrivals, and the meals. They have a huge meal program that we're happy to support through one of our contracts. And then also Saffron Trust, who work with mothers who are postpartum, et cetera. Mothers generally, and those who are maybe experiencing postpartum issues, and actually they also do a bit of prenatal work if you're not familiar with Saffron Trust. So you can find both of these organizations, and many organizations will post what they're seeing and what they're receiving through the various contracts, programs, and activities that our buyers are running currently. And of course, we're really excited about our impact statements as well. So what do they look like when we talk about healthy? So these are just some of the examples. New photos, happy to show them to you. The first group to see some of the new photography of our meals. These are literally our meals. Some are just put on plates for photos, and then we've left some in their arriving containers for you. They are beautiful. They are delicious. We get so much feedback every week. It's always amazing. The vegetarian roasted bell peppers with polenta is one of my favorites. And of course, a small mini meatloaf with green beans. We look to very much follow the USDA adult guidelines, 18 to 65 on portion sizing. The RE containers contain about 4 to 5 ounces of protein. It will contain 5 to 6 ounces of vegetables, and then about 3 to 4 of a complex carb. I'm sure you guys are going to have plenty of questions about these. In addition, our Rena meals, even further, the portion size, of course, is more restrictive as we sort to ensure reduced protein and phosphorus, which means you've got to think of very unique ways and other products that are outside of the Western palate, the Western diet, the stuff you see on the shelf at the HEB. So you've got to go outside, and you've got to have huge foodways knowledge in order to be able to find products that will work. you know, and under these conditions. And then in Mosaic Meals to Go, new logo just came out, really excited, and new photos. The tarragon chicken on oat spelt. Do we normally tell people it's oat spelt? No, we all know it's oat spelt. But again, the idea is that the food just tastes good. And as you can see that in the Asian chicken salad, the dressing there, that is one of our house dressings that we make. Did you know that there was a wheat English muffin? Yeah, it's very much pushing the supply chain to find these items and be able for us to do them affordably so that our buyers can offer them affordably or in many cases low cost or free. Some of the folks that we work with all over the universe, we're really proud of our work with Austin Public Health and just so many others here. Just too many to count, but we're really appreciative. That's us. That's me. And Dwight, who is my VP of Business Development. You can always ping either of us, and you can find me on Cooks Nook Austin online on just about all platforms. And then, so let's just chat a moment about, you know, really what's needed here, right? You know, nutritionists working with entrepreneurs is a key one. You know, I think there's a real gap between those who are in health and those who are actually responsible for making and creating food and getting it out the door. So how do you close that gap? You know, if I told you in Naturally Austin, which I sit on the board of, which is all, you know, a good chunk of the CPG companies, consumer packaged goods companies who are making products on the shelf, how would you engage with Naturally Austin? How would you engage with entrepreneurs? Many of them, especially the entrepreneur, the younger entrepreneurs, are looking to create products that are healthful, but many times their budgets are narrow. They are bootstrapping. And how do they make the nutrition aspect of what they're doing a priority? And they're trying to, many of them, like I mentioned about Aaron, are trying to figure it out by themselves, literally, and using something like Recipe or the tools inside US Foods that sort of punch out a nutrition label. But that's not, you know, how do I change those numbers? How do I be where I want to be? How do I ensure from day one, not try to do it later, that I can access the things I need, or what kind of other things could I be using to try to treat, you know, also achieve nutrition goals with the product that I'm creating? Many ask me all the time this question, right? And try to get them access to not just a tool that spits out a label, but to be able to have a conversation with somebody who's very knowledgeable and say, look, you're trying to achieve something with proteins. Have you ever thought about using dried lentils or grinding your own lentils and grinding your own lentils in order for you to have a, you know, a powder or a flour that you could potentially use as a protein source, right? That's an option, right? Or find a company who's actually offering a lentil flour, for that matter. Heck, if you don't find it, that's probably because that product needs to exist, right? There's all kinds of things that nutritionists could talk to people about. Joining the food groups. CPG Wake Up is every week. That is a huge group that is sponsored by Nelson Egan, one of the big firms, and Mark Nathan, who is just a leader in this space, biz dev guy for a bunch of attorneys who work with CPG. But what they do is they offer a wake up where entrepreneurs and everybody around food, it's not just those companies trying to make the food, but you'll find designers, you'll find marketing people, you will find potential investors, you'll find the distributors, you will find all kinds who attend these meetings. But you see very little nutritionists. I've never met one at a function, and food developers, folks who can work with you to actually develop product. So rare, and they shouldn't be, right? And I don't mean as in, you know, somebody who sits and does research at, you know, M&M Mars. I mean, just a nutritionist who's working with you, and as the entrepreneur churns out versions of their food, right? Because they're doing it all the time. Even they are in an R&D mode sometimes. What if I did it this way? What if I did this? Here's the product you're probably going to have to go find. And then last, prioritizing nutrition equity, diversity of food, and product access, right? To create culturally competent food. The idea that we dismiss everything at one of the primarily Mexican or primarily Chinese stores as being not food in a neighborhood remains problematic. We should really think about that. The idea that HEB is food and the supermercado is not is a problem, because it discourages people from finding the food that they need at whatever source that is, and they were even finding a way to make that more healthy for them. People do want to be close to the food that they know, and that's reasonable. So how do we make that equitable? The processes equitable, or the product equitable, right? And that means there's a role for nutritionists to help push the supply chain and push products to be more inclusive, healthful, expansive, right? To achieve health goals. That's it for me. Shall we open and chat a little bit? That would be awesome. I do not want to talk the whole time. Let's see. I'm going to stop.
Okay, that was great, Joy. And if I was not hungry prior to your presentation, I'm starving now.
Awesome.
And if you ever need a taste tester of the Cooks Nook,
You're gonna
shoot
come
me an
over and
email
visit?
and I'm there.
You're gonna come visit?
All right.
Awesome.
I feel like I have so much power as a moderator. I have like all these questions that I was
I know.
writing as you were speaking.
So there are 2 questions.
There are some questions, so I will turn it to the audience first. First question is, in the future, will Mosaic Meals be part of the USDA program for childcare with CN labels?
Ah, interesting. So child food and nutrition is challenging, to say the least, right? That is a very, what's the universe I'm looking for? Locked space. Physically locked, politically locked. I'll be honest with you. Trying to be in K through 12 is typically owned by the big brands like, Aramark, Sodexo, and those guys. They have, in this state, they have embedded themselves literally into the kitchens, literally into the kitchens of your schools and your ISDs. And those guys are very loath to give that up. And so I think that would be a challenge. We did work with some ISDs on their adult caregiver side. So while, and sorry, one more thing. And in Texas, you guys may or may not know, you can't make food in a public school kitchen that isn't going to the students, right? So that means we would have to be in the kitchens under the current laws to be able to do that. And then so that's a real challenge. Now, meals for the adults, by the same token, you can't use a kitchen to make meals for people outside. And so with a couple of school districts, we have worked with for their adult caregiver family. We know that if a child is hungry and in a program, chances are good their parents or adults are also hungry as well, because parents, adults, caregivers will forego food for children. And so some of them try to get around that by having an adult program, which we have been in. I would love to be able to do K through 12 food, but it is really hard, very hard here.
Well, now that I have kiddos in the AISD, I want to talk to you a little bit more. What can I do?
AISD is interesting because they have set up very amazing programs to try to bring in different kinds of food product, even though they make a lot of their own. They make just about all of their own and have huge kitchens. They have huge kitchens that are staffed by AISD folks, but of course, it's not equitable. It's not at every school, not even
Mm.
close, right? That's very clearly all over the place as well. But those guys, actually, if you go to their Instagram feed, ooh, man, you will see some beautiful little meals that they are making for schools.
I haven't seen the meals, but I've read the meal menu, and they sound fantastic to an adult, but like
Yeah,
mm,
you have to,
to a
you have to,
5-year-old, I'm like, I don't know, this
I don't
kid eat
know.
this.
My niece who lived me was at a high school here, and we never saw that food. So, by the same token. So, you know,
Okay. And I know you just came from a South by panel to this panel, and somebody asked, can you share again how to find the future of food discussions?
yeah, you can look at thefutureoffood.at. And the Future of Food YouTube should be available. If you look for cfrae, our conference, cfrae, the Conference on Food Resilience, Access, and Equity, my team may have ours cut out and posted already by this week. I haven't looked, but I know they were working on getting all of the panels that we were involved in directly posted. We hosted 4 under our rubric of cfrae. One was on culinary reclamation through entrepreneurship. One was on Black farm legacies. One was on coming to a neighborhood near you, food and mobility and transportation. And then the last one was really about the organizations who are doing this kind of work and some of their EDs. And that was on, what was that one called? It was still about, stories out of the community. So, and then I also did one panel um, with 2 council members discussing the Austin City Food Plan, which is currently being worked on, that a lot of us have asked for a long time. They're finally making a few investments towards developing a plan, not just an emergency plan, which is needed around food and water, but a general plan on how to support nonprofits, for profits, and this sort of relationship to ensure that we have a robust food system here in Austin, Central Texas. So, yeah,
Yes, we saw those RFPs, and we know a
yeah,
few people
yeah. No
who'd be
folks
great.
trying to figure out if they're going to do them or not. Yeah.
An audience member had a comment. Good way to reach out to nutritionists would be to contact local TEDx groups. I'm in Dallas, but there should be one in the Austin area.
Awesome. Well, thank
Thank
you.
you.
We can look at a TEDx. Yeah.
And good question. How do we prioritize nutrition equity if we aren't nutritionists but work in the public health sphere?
Oh, that's interesting in the public health sphere. So I think one of the things that's happened in the public health sphere, and I am speaking totally as a novice, sort of looking over there and wondering what's happening. For a long time, especially in Austin and Central Texas, food was subjugated as part of education, right? It happened in schools, therefore it's taken care of over there, or it was subjugated to housing. And you only saw food barely in relation to housing. It was a conversation within there. Part of what's happened over the last 3 to 4 years is people like me and others saying it can't be buried. Burying food in housing or having food done by people who do not understand food, the business of food, the way food works. Food is like fire. Organic things have their own way of moving and working, right? And therefore, when you want to put it in a particular place, in a particular structure, you have to really plan and think about that and what food works and what food does not work for that. You have to derive a solution. And I don't think people have treated food that way. It's that thing that happens somehow. And I think what some of us have said, and I hope those in public health and APH here, Austin Public Health, know you have to have a food plan and you have to have a food solution for people under these different circumstances. Certainly the circumstances under Storm Uri are not the circumstances this week, right? And we have to acknowledge that and use that and know that and do that. I think that in public health has to be able to say, we need to find the specialists and those who are working in this arena to work with You engage them on RFPs before you put them out. Sometimes the RFPs can create situations that are not real, or they seem to be done with not a lot of food understanding. And there are plenty of folks who are willing to help and say, you may have a committee that says, let's have a couple people who wouldn't necessarily respond to the RFP, read the RFP, who are in the business, right? That will make the RFPs better. You'll get better response. You may get more equitable response as well, and see more companies participate, in different kinds of companies and different sized companies, including black and brown companies, participate in that process. And that's just with a little work up front.
I have a
Because
question.
yeah.
I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
Since like you were talking about RFPs and like public health sphere, is there anything that we as researchers should do more of, or something you like to see researched more, or it's not enough, or we're doing too much of, or
Oh,
like in the research side of things,
and
what can you do with like food and tech?
is that food or food research or data providing in your mind? What is that?
Well, like food research, like what would be beneficial to you if you're applying for some grants? What would be official? What would be great to say, per so and so, like cite some article, cite some research. What would you like to see? What do you think
Um,
is not, what is not enough
I think
out
for
there?
those of us who produce and make food move through the community, I don't think it's about that kind of research. Nobody's going to quote that. I think what it is how do we have alternate, what are equivalent products, what's equivalent food, who's done the work on equivalent food, so you can make appropriate substitutions and be able to deal with the supply chain, right?
Okay.
That's what folks do day in and day out. Sure, I mean, I respond to RFPs, but any RFPs don't typically ask, at least not the ones I've seen, ask for citation, right? If I think about the LMPP, right, that's the big US, the USDA federal grant everybody's trying to write right now. Those guys come with forms you fill out. You're not writing a thing to prove a point. They're looking for cost. They're looking for an impactful project, and they're looking for a price tag, right? However, behind the scenes, I can work on my price tag and my OPEX, that is my operational expense, to get that thing
Mhm.
to market or to be able to respond to that if I'm talking with a nutritionist about what are my options around this food,
And
right?
so speaking of, how
Yeah.
much do the meals cost? How much do the mosaic meals cost?
It depends on the folks it depends on the folks. So, you can go into the retailers get to set their own prices, others get to set their own prices. Um, you know, we work with the organizations. It's based on volume, and delivery needs and shipping needs. So there's not a fixed price. We end up doing that stuff contract by contract.
Okay, because somebody asked, do you have any contracts that provide the meals at a discount? So I guess it
Yes,
would
we do.
depend on, yeah.
Yeah, you do. I mean, our meals are, going out to organizations. They're not free on a retail shelf. That's a different channel. Your retail shelf is not your contracts with governmental organizations or foundations or others who are doing specific work. So you can find Cooks Nook, you can find Mosaic Meals on in the cities. We're in the city's Healthy Corners program. So there were specific stores it was at. And
Mhm.
in that program, the retailer still sold at a subsidized price by the city. So every program is different, right? It's up to the program owners to decide what kind of program they're running and they're offering.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
Okay.
No, because it's
Yeah.
always hard. It's a business, but you want to provide affordable food to people who really need it. And
Yeah.
so it's kind of tricky. It can't be free, but it can be at some,
It can't
ten
be
ten dollars a
yeah, 10,
meal.
$12 a meal, right?
Right.
We certainly encourage folks to offer it subsidized. I mean, it just depends on who the contract owner is and what they're trying to do. Travis County, I'll say this because it's a public program from a public entity, has a program currently now, which is the one that a lot of people might know, which is started as Keep Austin Together, but it's the CFAN program. And Travis County provides meals through us to nonprofit, a set of nonprofit organizations here in town, right? And within that universe, they are free. They do not charge. They go to much of that list I showed you. And so that's just how they do their program.
Do you have contracts with other cities or mainly in here?
Yeah, mainly
Travis
here,
County?
here presently, but we're talking with a few other cities on the East Coast. And those
Another
would have to be shipped.
another comment question. Thank you for a great presentation. You are doing great work. How
Thank
would a
you.
nutritionist get more involved?
With us specifically? Was that the question? Yes?
I don't know if I don't know if the person meant with
Okay.
Cooks Nook or just more involved around this food space. Because in the last slide you said what's
Yeah,
needed.
there is.
And
Yeah, I mentioned CPG, Wake Up, Naturally Austin, entrepreneurs looking for stuff. The Food and Tech Meetup group is another way to meet people and meet their companies and find out who's needing stuff. Um, you know, there's one thing to do food science testing. If I have a bottled item and I need that bottle test and a pH test, I'm going to send it more than likely to Dr. Wagner over at A&M, right? That's just sort of the go-to for everybody here. That's different than having a nutritionist as you're developing the product in-house and doing your research and development. But you meet entrepreneurs, get involved with Naturally Austin. For us at the Cooks Nook, I hear there might be a rec open at some point for a registered dietitian, but we'll see. Hopefully in a few weeks.
all the dietitians are like bookmarking Cooks Nook right now. And somebody said, I'm a big fan of a local CSA. Are you able to partner with local farmers?
We do, actually. We do get some of our food from local farmers, but that is not the regular case. It is very much a challenge to do that. Most of our local, as you guys may or may not know, less than 0.5% of our food in Travis County is made by anybody within Travis County. The numbers on that are very small. For instance, I take 5 deliveries of 15 to 20 cases of fresh food each time. And most of our farmers here are not producing at that level, nor at a cost that is affordable. And many of them know that. I talk to them, I know them. And I've made the offer to them to say, hey, if you can provide me 15 cases a week, I can do that. And those are just not numbers that we have here in our urban and local farm space, which means, and I got to sit and when we talk about costs, find it across 27 different places to try to get what I need to get the orders I have to make what we do every week. We do about 11,000 meals a week presently in our programs. And that's a lot of vegetable and protein going out the door. And we have to do that quickly and efficiently. But again, occasionally someone will have a case of something, 2 cases of something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's usually almost 30% more than if I buy in volume from one of the big providers. And that is an ongoing conversation with all of us, is how do they have pricing that can be in these programs.
Right. And so I'm assuming you didn't use up everything, right? There's a little bit of like food waste maybe, but in the beginning of the presentation, you said you guys,
Yeah,
cut down on the food waste. So how do you measure food waste and what happens to the food? And
sure, absolutely.
Mhm.
So from a waste perspective, when we started in the program, what we purchased were items that had, had experienced already some shelf life from their OEM providers, as their original manufacturers, producers, or from the broadliners. Your broadliner is someone like Cisco, Benny Keith, or others. Those guys know the exact timing of all their food. And so I can make exact purchases for food that they were willing to move. These days, I don't really have to do that very much. And we're buying in such a volume that, trying to get a OEM manufacturer to come down and reduce the price out of the supply chain is very much a challenge. For instance, chicken has doubled in the last year, where 40 pounds of chicken used to be about $40 a case. It now runs at about $110 a case, right?
Okay.
But you don't want me to see me increase the price of the meals to any of our contract holders, right? So that kind of stuff becomes a real issue. Okay, I lost the question. What was it again?
Uh, about the food waste, like how do you measure
Oh,
food
oh yeah, sorry.
waste and what do
So
you do?
thanks,
Yeah.
ma'am. Buying things as they know them in their timeline that they were willing to move is one way you avoid that. Literally, when companies like that, a lot of them don't have their own waste plans. If they have products SKUs in their huge facilities that reach their end of life finally, they are, or even as they get close, they just wait and they just toss them. They just burn them. That's what they do. So us being able to catch them earlier in that process and say, hey, you guys need a corporate food plan to do something with some of this food instead of just letting it spew out and die, right? That's huge. Those guys move more food than anything else. That's what they do. They are the food movers in massive ways. What you see at a store and retail is a fraction of food. Fraction, right? So you've got to go
Right.
back in the supply chain on those who actually distribute and manage and move that food out. And that's one way we were doing it. Inside, once the product sort of reaches us, we don't have a lot of waste. We only order what we need to order. We take orders 4 times a week. So they come to us. We get all of our food fresh. It's made the next day, and it goes out on our trucks or mail the day after that. So it's gone. Um, when we think about, so we don't order more than we need. If,
Right.
you have a partial box of something, we have plans for that. It's going to be in something. It's going to be in the next meal, immediately the next meal. And then lastly, we do things like grub tubs, and then what little organic matter we have. You'd be surprised at how little we have. We have more packaging than we actually have organic matter.
Right.
That's yards and yards of packaging going out, but very little organic matter is leaving us. So
Is the Cooks Nook, are you guys going to do like a subscription service, kind of like the Blue Apron, so people can directly get meals from you guys like 3 times a week? Is
yeah,
that
no,
what's next? Or what's next for you guys?
no, we're not really focused on sort of broad retail in that fashion. Our channels are primarily to those areas that are underserviced. So we talk about the public channel, public space with our schools, districts, city council, federal. We're talking to a prison, right? These folks need food. Retail can solve itself. That's what I keep saying. Retail can solve itself. You'll have plenty of options because retail pays the most, right? Retail, what you see in a store, or even worse, e-commerce retail, is premium food, right?
Right, but those
Premium.
folks who are going to where the meals are right now, maybe at a corner store, if the prices were not subsidized, I don't know what,
Oh yeah,
I'm assuming every manager charges differently, right? And
true, but
so,
they're not in the range of something like you see in that kind of e-commerce retail, right? Those meals will run you anywhere from $12 to $17 a piece, technically, right? It just depends on the meal structure. So we're in things like convenience stores, local bodegas, independent small retailers who are serving very particular communities. So it's not in their interest to be high dollar price. That's not their community, right? That food would never move. So in the few retail spaces that we are today, though, we're on the verge of signing with a larger independent convenience store group. Most of the meals on the shelf, even in those places, are going to be under $8 to $7, or even less than that.
and I'll close with the last question. I know we have
Yeah.
like 2-3 minutes.
Yeah.
Do we know if Austin will get a zero waste bulk store anytime soon? Does
A book,
anyone in the know?
a bookstore?
Zero waste bulk store.
Oh, bulk stores. Here's a bookstore, the bookstore. A bulk store. Yes. Um, that's interesting. I know the city is talking about having food hubs and not just emergency food hubs where food is gotten together from whatever sources there are, reviewed, um, maybe repackaged for potential use, whether it's under some emergency scenario or not. Um, but I have not heard that that would be zero waste. They have to figure out the plan first, figure out what a hub means and how it's funded first before they can try to get it to be zero waste.
Good idea for that 5-year plan.
I know in the 5-year plan, I know, right? Somebody should bring that up in those 5-year plan conversations.
Um, so I just want to say that many audience members have said this was fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
And so truly, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And thank you to all our audience members for being here
Yeah,
today.
thank
We
you.
really appreciate it.
I wish I could see everybody's face and say hello, hello.
I know,
Thank you.
right? I know
Yeah.
it's different doing it in person.
I,
But this webinar will be archived on our website at msdcenter.org. Thank you again, Joy, and thank you to all. We'll see you next time.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye.